Hey everyone, welcome back to bageltcg. Today we're going to be doing a tier list for pre-calling Singapore and Pro Tour Lille meta. But before we get into that, I want to say thank you to everyone who entered the giveaway for the Monarch playmat. The winner is Mason Roberts, so I will message Mason, hopefully he gets back to me, and get you that Monarch playmat. So thank you for everyone who entered, for all support, and for getting me to 1K subscribers. Definitely never thought I would get here, so I really appreciate it. Also, I will be announcing on Patreon the winner for the Patreon giveaway for anyone that was at the Everything Bagel tier. And I also, after this video, will be publishing a Patreon-only sideboard guide and a kind of matchup guide for the Bravo deck tech I just did. So thank you to all the patrons. Also, shout out to our sponsor, Whipped Wizard. You can use the affiliate link in the description to support the channel. But let's get right into the tier list here. So this tier list, post Stubby's ban, right? Stubby Hammerers is banned for Phi, definitely decreasing his power level and explosiveness. And we've kind of seen a little bit of events. We haven't seen an event, a major classic constructed event yet with this meta per se, I don't think. But we have had, a major classic constructed event with a close to similar meta, just without, Stubby Hammers. No, I should say we have had a Battle Harden. Oh, no, Stubby Hammers was legal for that one too. So yeah, we haven't seen anything after Stubby Hammers has been banned, but meta's not significantly different, just opens up a few other decks and decreases Phi's power level a little. Speaking of, I think Phi is actually... I think he might not be the strongest aggro deck anymore. I think he's probably a little easier to disrupt and has a little lower damage output than the RUNEBLADEs. So I'm actually just going to put him at the top of A tier for now. I'm going to put the RUNEBLADEs at the top of S tier. I think, they're kind of the premier aggro decks of the format, especially Viserai. Briar, I don't know, I'll put Briar actually in A tier as well. I think Viserai has kind of the premier consistency and ability to output tons of damage. Mauvrin Skies, Shrill, Swarm and Gloomveil, Revel and Runeblood. He's got all the power tools. So I think Viserai is probably the premier aggro deck right now. I think Phi and Briar are pretty good too, and I think all three are totally fine picks for any kind of format. I will say A tier is kind of like tier 1.5. They're not like drastically worse, and I think anything that I put in S tier or A tier has a total chance to win a Pro Tour or calling. So anything I put under that, I maybe have a little less hope in, but I think anything that is in S tier or A tier has a pretty solid chance to win a major event. After the aggro decks, though, we've got the Guardians to counter the aggro decks. I think I'll set it up like this. I think Bravo has a little bit better disruption, and Oldham doesn't have just the damage output that Bravo has. He doesn't have the crippling crush. He doesn't have the ability to dominate on demand. And I think he's still a solid pick, like I said, but I just don't think he has quite as much power on demand as Bravo does. And I think that's kind of one of the differences we're seeing here, is that Viserai has more consistent power compared to Briar, and same with Bravo, has more consistent disruption, while sometimes you don't have the fuse for Oakenold with Oldham. He just doesn't have as much disruption consistently as Bravo does. And rounding out S tier here, we have Prism. As always, kind of the destroyer of anything disruptive. She just beats any of these controlling disruptive decks like Guardian, like Ranger, Wizard. She just has a lot of really kind of 100% win rate almost matchups that are hard to lose. And she just has to figure out her matchup into these aggro decks. But I think her Heralds give her a good chance. And I think Prism, until she gets 2 more Living Legend points and leaves the meta, will always be a pretty big threat. So for now, I think Prism is going to round out our S tier here. Actually, surprise contender, I think Dash might be the last S tier hero. In our testing so far, she's been pretty powerful. I mean, she has pretty good game into the Guardians and to Prism, able to set up with her pistol and all her items. And Teklo Pounder has ended up being a pretty powerful tool to race the aggro decks. I mean, I think before Dash's problem is that she got ran over by the aggro decks, right? She had a horrible chain matchup. She had a bad matchup into all these aggro decks. But Teklo Pounder makes it so I wouldn't say any of them are positive, but I don't think they're anything worse than like 45% chance, 50% chance. You really just need to go second and get that Teklo Pounder in there, or go first and get Spark of Genius or something, you know. But I think she has a pretty close 50-50, 45% chance into any of the aggro decks and a good win rate into the rest of the decks. So I think Dash is probably in a pretty good spot right now. So I'd say that's our S tier. We've kind of got one of each, a good aggro, a good disruptive, and a good setup deck. And then Dash is kind of doing everything. She's a good setup deck and a good aggro deck. But yeah, I think that's what our S tier looks like right now. Rounding out A tier, then we've got Kano up in here. Still able to blow people up, still, you know, taking control of the lack of disruption. I think this is going to really determine based on how many people are running Oasis Respite. That card really hoses Kano. If you find it, turns off Wildfire. You just need like Arcane Barrier 2 plus Oasis Respite, pitch a blue to you know, Arcane Barrier 2 and Oasis Respite, and Kano basically loses on the spot. So yeah, I mean, I think if people are packing 2 or 3 Oasis Respites and they can find it, Kano's not happy about it, but he has game into all these decks, and I feel like it's hard for Kano to ever be bad in the sense that he can always just deal 40 damage on turn 0 if he wants to. You know, like, his deck is insane, has the most explosive power of any deck, and it's not particularly close. And yeah, he just has the tools to blow people up, and he'll always be able to just high roll an event if he needs to. Starting in B tier, we have the 2 other ice decks, Lexi and Icelander. They both have a pretty bad matchup into Prism, basically unwinnable, but instead of like the Guardians who have a bad matchup into Prism, these decks also don't have as good of a matchup into the aggro decks, right? Like, obviously Lexi and Icelander are good into the aggro decks, but they don't have as much power as the Guardians, who have 3 blocks on everything and a good weapon. And these heroes are both missing a weapon that lets them attack auras, first of all, so it makes it even harder into Prism. And in general, I think these decks are good, but I don't think they have all the tools they need to be a top deck right now. I think they're close to A tier, but I think that they're just not quite there, but they make up number 9 and 10 out of the 10 best decks, right? So I think they're still good, but just not quite good enough. And then after that, I think we've got Dorinthia and Dromai here. Dorinthia has proven to be pretty powerful. Her new Dawnblade build after they got the dual decks is pretty strong. She got some new tools, and once again, a deck that loses to Prism, but yeah, I think she's a little lacking on power. I mean, in general, the Welcome to Wraith heroes aren't all doing, amazing. Bravo is in S tier, which is pretty great, but Dorinthia, not the rest of the Welcome to Wraith heroes don't have quite the power that the Guardians do. So I think Dorinthia is going to be in B tier here. Dromai, on the other hand, has the incredible power of Illusionist, but unfortunately, at least from what I've seen, has a bit of a hard matchup into aggro. And that's kind of where her weakness lies, is the Illusionists do have a bit of a problem with the aggro decks, but especially since Dromai's dragons trigger on hits, Mask of Momentum on hits, Snatch on hits, anything you name it. She's going to struggle a little there, and she doesn't really have as much of the power that Prism has with the Go Again Heralds. So for that reason, I think she's good, but I think once Prism leaves, she'll become the de facto, she'll be the only Illusionist, right? But I think she'll actually be pretty good and take up the slot that Prism was. But for now, I don't see a ton of reason to play her over Prism, other than wanting to play your cool, shiny Marvel Dragons. And then in C tier, we've got the other ninja and the brutes here. Katsu just doesn't have a lot that Fi can't offer. He's just less damage. Fi gets a free attack in every turn. Kind of more consistent weapon that does 1 more damage than Katsu's does, and just has some more explosive power than Katsu does overall. Meanwhile, the brutes just generally aren't great into aggro, and aggro's pretty good right now. Aggro's pretty good, and they're not great into the Guardians either. especially the disruptive guardians like Bravo. I mean, they're good into blocking guardians like Oldhim, but into guardians that care less about blocking like Bravo, they have some troubles as well. So they'll beat up on Prism, but even then, with her new zero cost auras, it's not as easy as it used to be. And Katsu in general, I think the Brutes and the Ninja need a little more help. Obviously, we have a pretty good Ninja right now, but a lot of that is cards that are specifically from Uprising and not Ninja generic cards. And then in D tier, we have kind of the duds of the format. They've been in D tier for a long time. Azalea and Bolton just don't have what it takes. They need a lot of support. We need some Ranger cards in Dynasty. We need some maybe light Warrior cards in Dynasty, or just Warrior cards in general that help Bolton out. But they seem to be the weakest heroes and definitely have the least likely chance of hitting Living Legend anytime soon. But yeah, this is kind of where I think the format is right now. I mean, I think it's healthier than it was before. If we look at previous metas, like when Starvo was around, we had Starvo, Chain, and Prism. And I probably would have laughed at you if you weren't on any of those 3 decks. Obviously, Kano came up and ended up being pretty good, so I'll say Kano was number 4, kind of sleeper hit, but also I wouldn't have laughed at any Kanos after the Pro Tour. But outside of those 4 heroes, I mean, I don't think there was any good options, but 2 of them have Living Legend now with Chain and Starvo. Prism Kano still quite good, but I think the meta's opened up a lot after that. I think even B tier heroes might be able to make it in a major event. But if you picked any of these 8 heroes at the top here, I think you would be able to use enough skill expression to win any kind of major event, especially these split events like the Pro Tour and Calling that are half draft. I mean, you just need to perform well in draft, do good enough in CC, and I think any of these heroes are good enough to take you all the way there. So I'm pretty happy with this meta right now. Obviously, sometimes when major events happen, the meta kind of shrinks down a little, focuses on what heroes really performed well. But especially right now, without any major events happening yet, I think we've got 8 days until Calling Singapore. We don't really know what the meta looks like exactly. We haven't had any major event results, and the meta looks pretty nice. My armories have been fun. And yeah, I think the meta is pretty healthy right now, and I like what it looks like here. Let me know what you guys are playing, what you think about the meta, how you feel about the tier list, where you would place people differently. Yeah, well, let me know what hero you want to see a deck guide on next. I mean, I just did Bravo, done enough Fi already. Maybe you'd want a Viscerai deck tech. I mean, I just said he's like the best aggro deck. Maybe I should put a deck to support that. Maybe a Dash deck tech, or Kano. I mean, I don't think I've done a Kano one yet. So in general, just let me know what you guys are interested in. And thank you again for all the support getting us to 1K subscribers. Remember to like, subscribe, comment, and I'll see you guys next time.